tonight, we're going to hear some interesting comments, I'm sure, from Dillon Tabish. Let me tell you a little bit about Dillon. He was born and raised in Missoula, and after a time he worked as a river guide in Idaho and a wildland firefighter in western Montana. Before he graduated from the University of Montana School of Journalism, so he learned how to write along the way, which became helpful. He spent nearly 10 years working as a journalist in the Flathead Valley. And in 2017, he joined the Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks as their regional communication and education program manager here in Kalispell. So many of the things that pop up in with regard to wildlife, when the public is involved, Dillon is the interface between the department and the public. So he sometimes has to do a lot of fast talking and interpreting things. That's right, dancing. So he's going to talk to us about the, well, I'll read you the title of his talk, The Boom of Outdoor Recreation and the Importance of Promoting Sustainable Behavior. So there's a lot more people coming to Montana and they like to recreate. And this is probably going to cause some issues. So Dillon?
Yeah, I think you got this thing on there. Thank you, David. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me to come speak to this great group. It's been a while since I've done an in-person meeting, and so this is really refreshing to be able to sit in a room and talk and interact with people. So I'm also super rusty at public meetings, so I've been used to doing Zoom meetings for 2 years now. So forgive me if I'm a little robotic. It's still kind of getting back to social interaction. But I really appreciate the chance to speak to this group because, as David mentioned, kind of the headline that I think is kind of a defining headline for this valley right now, and I think it will be for quite some time, is the boom of outdoor recreation, which is a good thing. We've got more people caring about, or not, more people utilizing our public spaces and our resources, which is great. That's, a healthy, I know during the pandemic, I sought refuge in our public places and our outdoor spaces more than ever. And it was something, living in western Montana my whole life, I almost took for granted how lucky we are to have all these places where, when the world's got all kinds of crazy stuff going on and stressful stuff and you're stuck locked inside, and we've got a lot of places where we could get outside and hear the birds and get some fresh air and some solitude and just some peace and quiet. And man, I never appreciated that more than ever these last 2 years. The downside, I guess if you could say, the downside is that everybody else really appreciates that, and that's why we're going to talk a little bit about the secret's for sure out. And now that we have more and more people moving here and visiting here, to me and to many others, it's incredibly critical that we are sustainable and how we recreate and use these beautiful natural resources so that we don't love them to death. You often hear that with Glacier Park, and I think it's very appropriate in Glacier Park, but it's appropriate beyond Glacier Park. Anyone who's been on our rivers or out in our wild places, it's not uncommon to that solitary nature is kind of in some ways going away. So that's what I'm here to talk about a little bit today. And I promise it's not going to be depressing. My goal is to hopefully inspire all of you. Excuse me. And this is an inspired group already, so I don't really need to. I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. I know this group does an amazing job at getting out and doing community events, supporting community organizations. I mean, how perfect for the Center for Native Plants to get recognition, because really what I'm talking about tonight is exactly what we need to do for organizations like theirs. It takes a community to support these good things, and we need to really normalize good behavior and supporting the good things going on. And otherwise, there's a lot of pressure that can really stamp out some of that. So we don't want to lose any of that. I'm probably messing this up already, Jake, isn't I? Oh, there we go. So I work for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. We are the state agency in charge of managing and maintaining and stewarding our natural wildlife resources, fisheries resources, and state parks in Montana. This is our, if you had to sum us up in one sentence, this is our mission statement. We unite people to help us protect the integrity of the Montana experience outdoors. And so I'm going to do a quick little rundown of FWP, kind of who we are and what we manage before diving into the Recreate Responsibly campaign. I'll run through kind of this presentation and then afterwards just open it up for any general questions, because it seems that I definitely don't have a boring job by any means. Every day there's something exciting or excitable going on that I get involved with. So any questions folks have about anything, I'm open to trying to answer them as best I can. As David says, I sometimes just have to kind of dance around things. That's part of the job too. This is a video that just kind of a fun video that we put out a couple years ago.
They say the new world is virtual, that soon people will not go outside, that we will experience nature not through hunting or fishing, hiking or camping, but through headsets, goggles, and mobile phones. That instead of taking to woods and rivers, adventures will be discovered in the warm, dry confines of living rooms and easy chairs. Really? Whoever they are, they don't see what we see, or go where we go, or get what we do. We are Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and alongside everyone picks up a rod, pitches a tent, or sets foot on a trail, we work to protect the integrity of what makes Montana, Montana. Because around here, the outside is in us all. And if we have anything to say about it, it always will be.
So ironically, we made this video before COVID, when the nationwide narrative, I guess, was that fewer people were buying fishing licenses, fewer people were going hunting, and outdoor recreation was still kind of growing, but it was kind of growing like this. And then COVID came around, and it was a hockey stick. Everything went straight up. We had spiking everything. So there was no lack of interest. So that video, I think, is more appropriate now than ever. So Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, we manage 55 state parks, 356 fishing access sites, 84 wildlife management areas. All of that totals over 500,000 acres across Montana. That's just Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Total federal public land in Montana, 27 million acres. So that shows you, I think, how lucky we are here in Montana. Here's just a kind of I try to include this all the time because I often get yelled at for, my tax dollars aren't paying for that. It's like, well, actually your tax dollars really are paying very little of what Fish, Wildlife, and Parks does. Only about $800,000 annually from the general fund, meaning that goes, I think, out of your income tax. We only get about $800,000 for the aquatic invasive species prevention program. So the boat stations, everything else, 74% of our agency is funded by hunting and fishing licenses. The state parks are funded. We don't get general funds for those either, and we don't get to use hunting and fishing license dollars for state parks. So state parks are primarily funded by that $9 optional fee. So when you go and register your vehicle every year, you have an option to either pay $9 or not. And then if you go to a state park, you just got to pay. So that's the primary funding source for state parks. And that was just increased by a couple dollars at the last 2 legislative sessions ago. And then 25% comes from federal excise taxes, primarily Pittman, Robertson, Dingell, Johnson. So I'm sure you all know what that is. Hunting, guns and ammo sales have an excise tax that supports wildlife conservation, and then fishing equipment also for the fishing side. So really, this is kind of, why we get sometimes accused of being the hook and bullet agency. Well, in some ways, that's largely because we are funded by hooks and bullets. However, our mission is to protect all of our natural resources, fishing, wildlife, and recreational in Montana. So that's where we have this kind of dual mandate. We have constituents we have to serve, hunting and fishing, but we also have to serve just general wildlife conservation in Montana. That's not easy, as you can all imagine. So that's where I usually have to start dancing, is when those debates start happening, because it's not an easy answer, and there's not an easy way to please everyone in that regard. So why am I here to yak at you tonight? Well, because these are the headlines that we've been seeing these last 2 years. Record license sales. I think I saw where the Kalispell is the largest micropolitan area, fastest growing in the nation. I don't know what a micropolitan area is, but we are growing. and this isn't really news to anyone who's lived here, but it's growing and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. The 2020 in all of our stats was unprecedented, historic highs. Last year didn't beat 2020, but it would have been the record year other than 2020. So we're starting to wonder if maybe this is the new normal. It could be. And the reason we think that is because it's not just visitors coming here. I mean, in 2020, we had a record year for non-residents applying for hunting licenses and buying fishing licenses. But we've also just got a lot of people moving here. So those are new residents. And obviously, unless we keep getting April snowstorms, I don't know if they're going anywhere. That might scare them off though. And then this is what happens when you get crowds. You start getting things like terms like rivergeddon, where we just start crowding, and we have issues with basically everything that comes with more people in more places. But also the thing that stands out to me and a lot of the folks I work with is the behaviors. You get folks who move here and they're not used to doing the things that as Montanans we're just used to doing, properly storing your food so that a bear doesn't come into your campsite. If you're from New York or California or Washington, you've never had to worry about being bear aware, so that's completely foreign to you. Similar with, I'm sure a lot of the stuff that folks, the native plants place works, but they have people buying properties and then calling us and asking us, well, if we want to have an elk herd in our yard, how do we keep that going? Like, it's just like, no, we don't do that here in Montana. That's not something that we are a fan of. And so it's really an education movement is what we need. We have a great need for addressing bad behavior that really oftentimes isn't bad behavior for bad behavior's sake. We have obvious issues. I mean, people who are doing this stuff, I don't know how to fix this behavior other than we just try to get game wardens out there behind every tree and stopping them, because these are obvious issues that people know that's not the right thing to do. People know tearing up a porta potty is not the right thing to do. Driving in mud and just completely, destroying a fishing access site. That's always been a challenge, and fixing that is difficult, but it's also oftentimes issues. Well, here's one. We had at the kids' fishing pond, Pine Grove. Somebody just had a little campfire over here in this type of brush, and these are the kind of things that make me think they're new residents, and this is probably an unfair accusation, but it's like, well, who thought that this was going to be an okay place to have a campfire? I mean, that just screams wildfire to me. Somebody did, and then look what happened. They almost burned down our kids' fishing pond. And so that type of bad behavior is one thing, but we've got less obvious but still problematic behavior that I think is just going to really require a mindset, an education and awareness, because some people don't realize what they're doing is bad or causes problems. I have been this person who in Glacier Park or the state park comes to a site, it's super crowded, and the designated parking spots are taken. But yeah, I bet you I could squeeze my truck right there. And next thing you know, I squeeze my truck right there, and he does, and then they got their camper they're squeezing in. And next thing you know, we've got gridlock in our state parks. This is Les Basin, I believe. And then we have neighbors who are furious because somebody's parked halfway across their driveway. And then we've got emergency service people telling us that this is like a major safety issue. And it's a ripple effect now that started because I thought, we drove all the way here. And I bet you that's that's harmless, right? And then it just exponentially goes from there. This is always a fun one to bring up because I love dogs. Everybody loves dogs. Nobody's dog's a problem. Everyone else's dogs are the problem, right? But man, we have a lot of issues with our four-legged friends. In the birding community, I'm sure you are aware of them more than I am about, specifically in areas where we've got this time of year nesting and resting going on, and people just let their dogs run wild. And it really causes major issues in the birding community. I mean, you lose nests that way very easily. We have waste issues. We have biting, children being bitten at parks. We have just the conflict of dogs running like wild. If anybody's been to a Canadian national park, has anybody been to the national parks in Canada? They let you have dogs up there. And when I went up there, it was I can't remember the site. It was like in Banff. It was their equivalent of like Avalanche Lake, one of the most busy places. And it was like out of a parody. There were dogs running everywhere. And me and my friends were just like, this is crazy. And I guess up in Canada, they're just used to it, so they didn't mind that it was just complete chaos, and it made me really appreciate our Park Service putting their foot down, because it was insane, it was wild. And so dogs, and there's one that we have a lot of issues related to dogs. And so, but as a dog owner, you don't think your dog's a problem. You're not letting your dog run wild because you want to create problems like the person who just doesn't care and is throwing their garbage out. But maybe you don't realize that the things that you're doing is not only potentially creating a problem, but you're also setting the example that others are going to follow. You go to a place and you see a couple dogs run free and you're like, oh, it must be fine here, right? I mean, Heron Park to me is the prime example. When I'm out there running, even though they have the giant dogs must be on a leash sign that's like pretty obnoxious, like a big billboard, there's dogs running wild out there. And it's harassment for wildlife. It's an extreme example, but we've had instances where dogs go out and they get a bear all worked up, and then they come running back to their owner and they bring a bear back. And so it's dog, as you'll see later, dogs deserve their own little messaging campaign that we're gonna hopefully help with. This is another extreme example, but it is a relevant example. When we have these issues then, whether it's the extreme ones like the garbage or shooting signs, going out in the woods to sight your rifle in and just trashing the place, parking where you're not supposed to, using and abusing the land, it really disincentivizes us. It makes it really hard for us to find new sites for public lands. For example, we're trying to get we've gotten a couple public lands recently. Summers Beach is one of them. And we get an increasing amount of opposition because neighbors see that stuff going on at other sites and rightfully so say, don't bring those problems to my neighborhood. Like, what's going on? We don't want people having dogs run through. I'll tell a quick story, and I was blown away by it down at Summers. If anyone's familiar with Summers, I'm sure you all are. I was down there doing a TV interview recently, just talking about our new state park, and the interview got done, and I heard some yelling and screaming over by one of the houses over there along Burnell Avenue, which is right now the walk-in access to the site. And a couple of folks were going down to the beach, and they had 5 dogs. 2 of them were on leash, 3 of them were not. And the landowner, who's right there, was yelling at him, "Get your dogs off my property! Get your dogs off my property!" And he was being pretty loud and aggressive about it. And I just I basically was done with the interview. I'm just hoping to God this guy doesn't follow me with his camera, and ran over there and said, hey, can you calm down? What's going on? And he's like, get these dogs off my property. And the ladies were trying to get their dogs, but they were off leash, and the dogs were running like crazy. And he's screaming. I'm like, please get your dogs, please off his property. And then one of the dogs ran inside his house. His door was open. And I was so worried. And he lost it and said, I'm going to shoot your dog, and ran inside afterwards. And then the woman's really worried. And it was a panic moment. Luckily, no one got shot. No dogs got shot. But he came out, threw the dog out. And it was a bad episode. And so that's an extreme example as well. But it just can show you how it escalates quickly. And I wish this guy would have been a little more respectful about it, but I understand if that's been happening a lot and I'm trying to enjoy my property and somebody's dog ran in my house, I wouldn't be happy either. So that's a small example. Big example. We had a couple buy basically a fifth of the region here a couple years ago, 130,000 acres down west. You can see where it is right here. And this has all been, it's part of that historic corporate timberland. Years ago when I grew up, there was 1 million acres of corporate timberland owned by Plum Creek in western Montana. Over the years, it's been sold off to now, there's about 600,000 acres of corporate timberland. These folks bought 130,000 acres. And that, for all of you who've lived here for a long time and recreate and hunt on these lands, these have been open for public access, since the railroad gave them to the timber companies back in the 20s and 30s. And so they've essentially, we and I have taken them for granted as public lands. Well, then when they start getting sold, and we've had a lot of this stuff getting sold and closed, that suddenly is reduced opportunity. We're losing opportunity now. And so when these folks bought this land, we immediately at FWP were nervous, because that's a that's a sea change if we start losing that type of landscape for our recreational opportunities. And luckily, these folks are keeping it open, other than they closed 25,000 acres around Lake Mary Ronan, and then they're keeping everything from here over. They're keeping that all open with this caveat. It is our intention going into this to be good neighbors, but being good neighbors is a two-way street. We hope that the public who wish to use this land is committed to being good neighbors too. Because if anybody who's been out to some of these corporate timberlands, it is just shameful to see the garbage, the fires. There was 2 years ago a fire that fire investigators don't know how it started. They burned up 20,000 acres over by Hubbard, right down in here. And so people are just abusing this land, and granted, this is all private land. It could be closed in a heartbeat. And that would just be a lost opportunity for all of us. So this bad behavior has consequences, whether it's small ones or very big ones. So what are we doing about it? Well, Recreate Responsibly is, I like to kind of compare it to Leave No Trace 2.0. When I was growing up in Missoula and doing the scouts and everything, Leave No Trace was just like something that I heard everywhere I went. Whenever I was outside, the Rangers were talking about Leave No Trace. It was cool to leave no trace, and it was just ingrained into you, and as a kid in Missoula at least. And that's why when I talk about we've got all these new folks moving here, that they don't have that necessarily. And we not to say that locals don't have some bad behaviors too, because locals have plenty of bad behaviors that we need to try to work on as well. But I think with this giant increase of new people moving here, we need to help them understand what it means to be in Montana. Bearware, all that stuff. Leave no trace. Pack it in, pack it out. Aquatic invasive species, clean, drain, dry. There's a lot of these things that if you are from another state, you just don't know about. And so it kind of saddens me when I see these, the bumper stickers that are like, go home and all that. But I think is the wrong mentality to have. Sure, as someone who's lived in Western Montana my whole life and has more crowds and more of my favorite places than ever, I don't love it, if I'm being completely honest. But I don't think the mentality should be to scoff at those folks and kind of create a wedge or it's a neighborly thing, I think, for us to try to help them understand what it means to be here in Montana and how we can sustain the reason they came here and the reason we love it here. That's going to be the big push. And so we've started this campaign, Recreate Responsibly, that I hope will be this new Leave No Trace campaign that just becomes ingrained into our mindsets here in Montana. So we and others, it's not like it's just FWP. We as the land managers, along with the National Park Service and the Forest Service, really saw this right off the bat, particularly with COVID. It was very eye-opening that first in 2020, where we had squatters living out in the woods. Just an array of issues that we saw that were also on top of just age-old issues like being bear aware, clean, drain, dry. And so we saw the need that sustainability and promoting good behavior is, I think, going to be the defining issue, overarching issue for us moving forward. So let's try to create a campaign that really tries to promote that in information, education, and just normalizing sustainability and good behavior. So here's our state parks one that we do for just our state parks, for example. And you can see the campaign objective is just really improving behavior and increasing awareness. So you can see some of them: leave no trace, respect public lands and waters as well as native and local communities. Take everything out that you bring in. Respect wildlife, give wildlife lots of space and be respectful of their habitat. Do not feed or encourage interaction with wildlife. Some of these originally were specific to COVID, social distancing and all that, and now we're kind of swapping in other new messaging that I think is going to be critical to this. The big challenge is going to be, this is 8 slogans right here. We could probably in this group name 40 slogans that need to be part of this behavior education campaign, because we know, every audience or every place has unique challenges like this. And so that is really going to be the challenge with this campaign, is that it's not like one simple message that's going to resonate across all audiences. There's a lot of stuff that we're trying to get across to people. So that's why the importance is going to be in kind of taking the shotgun approach and marketing it with our content that we can share with other groups, but also trying to support local groups and organizations that can really help carry this message for us. So here's another little video that kind of gives you an example of some of the content at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that we're trying to create and share with partners.
With 55 state parks throughout Montana, recreation opportunities are endless. Whether you're into camping, hiking, biking, or enjoying the pristine waters, we've got you covered. Before you go, be sure to check our website to see what amenities are available in each park and at what times of the year. Not all parks are staffed or have visitor centers. When interacting with staff, be sure to maintain a safe distance.
This was during COVID.
Our staff can help answer your questions, point out highlights of the park, or just offer a friendly wave. Be sure to check out our different programs and tours available in the parks. Some tours may not be offered year-round, so be sure to check the website for any updates, as well as additional COVID-19 precautions and requirements. We look forward to your visit, and thank you for helping us make the outdoors safe and welcoming for all. Thank you for recreating responsibly.
So there's one example of a video that went out during COVID, and we tried to get it out on TV ads and elsewhere. Here's some other digital ads that we're trying to promote and just get out there as much as we can. Social graphics, throwing it all over social media as much as we can. But this is, I think, the most important message here is that we need your help. Those are fine for us as a good old government agency to try to get the word out. But, I'll be the first to admit, me sitting up here and trying to be like, do the right thing, good behavior, isn't going to resonate as well as you talking to your neighbors, you as community organizations helping spread this message, because it resonates so much more when it's from an organization like this, when it's from you to your neighbors, to your friends, and then obviously you leading the way with that good behavior. Because it doesn't take much for one person to do one thing, and then that sets an example, whether it's out on a trailhead or in how you kind of go about recreating. And so we've tried to get public and private groups together that are involved in tourism, land management, conservation. For example, our local Kalispell Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Whitefish Convention and Visitors Bureau are really leading the way in the state with this, because up here we've got a lot of folks who understand this, that are very conservation minded and want to protect this kind of special resources that we have here. And so it didn't take much for us to get them to be like, we're on board, what do we need to do? And so it's really neat. If you notice all the advertising that the Convention Visitors Bureau does and Kalispell or Whitefish does, they always are including recreation responsibly messaging, which is great. Whenever they send out news releases, whenever they're doing radio ads or video ads, they're always talking about sustainability and promoting that good behavior. So that's really cool to see, because they obviously are reaching a lot of the visitors coming here. Another cool opportunity that came up is a business partner program. So trying to get businesses in the valley to become a Recreate Responsibly business partner. And so everything from putting on your receipt when you go to a restaurant, don't forget, carry bear spray, or some little, we basically gave them like 40 messages that if this is something that you can incorporate in signage or on your receipts or just in something in your business, we would love to have that, because it's gonna be repetition, it's gonna be just getting their word out in as many places as possible and then hoping it resonates. And this is all in the early stages. This is basically just over a year old. So we're hoping that it's gonna snowball, I hope. We're just still in the small snowball phase. If you want more information, anyone here, this is the link that I will happily share with you, and it's got all the messaging, all of the tips, and basically what we're trying to do at the state agency level is give you all the right things to say, and then let you, whether you're a business or an organization, shape it around your identity, shape it around your audience. This group, for example, maybe it's focusing in on wildlife viewing. What are some of the behaviors that you notice when you're out wildlife viewing that need to be addressed? And we'll work with you and give you content if we need to, videos, graphics. There's grant opportunities out there. so that then you could all help carry the message to your audience and to your group. Same with businesses, it's trying to cater this to what they need and what they want. We don't want this to be a one-size-fits-all. But we also want to make it so that you don't have to do a lot of this legwork and reinvent the wheel. We'll tell you what there's issues about. And then if you could help us spread that word, that would be great. So this link has a lot of that stuff on it, but I'm happy to talk to anybody afterwards. Here's a fun video, for example. We worked with the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Yellowstone country and this was a really fun video that they put out all across south central Montana.
Well, hello there. Nice of you to stop by Yellowstone Country. Now, first things first. Here in Montana, we play hard and play it safe. I'll show you what I mean. Keep your distance. Taking to do wildlife. Neither the bison nor the bear wants your hug. Because the hat will be just fine. And social distance? That's what these are for. Just wear a mask. And use hand sanitizer. I keep mine in my sock. Hands off your eyes, nose, and mouth. If you have to sneeze, cover it up. And make sure you're away from people. Like this. Remember to wash your hands too. And if you feel a little under the weather, sit this one out. Montana isn't going anywhere. Not too hard, huh? Just play it safe and be kind to the folks around you. That's the Montana way. Play it safe, Montana.
So that's another one that's obviously very COVID-centric. So we'll be updating that now with kind of some of the evergreen campaigns like wildlife viewing, stay a distance away from wildlife, bear aware, pack it in, pack it out. But some examples of how other organizations are helping get the word out. Here locally, this was a really cool example of Flathead Conservation District and Flathead Basin Commission hosting a cleanup event last year that I'm sure you recognize a bunch of you were involved in. And 186 volunteers collected over 2,600 pounds of trash and improved 95 miles of riverbank and lakeshore. So this is a cool example of if you want to go a step further than just helping us get the word out, these community events I think are really important. I mean, that is depressing and awesome that we picked up that much, but that's crazy to me. And it was a fun event, and it was really positive and celebrated at Sacred Waters afterwards. But there's an example of another way you can get involved and try to help us in this effort. Here's another example. City of Whitefish has really, I think, become a model community in Montana. They took the Recreate Responsibly kind of core, and they catered it to what they thought would be the best for whitefish, which is be a friend of the fish. So they took a lot of our same messaging. So you click on each of these and they've got pull down menus with every other things, be a steward of the land, recreate responsibly. But they found other issues in their community that they wanted to kind of merge together with this. Support local businesses. That's really important in whitefish, which is awesome. Take it slow, enjoy the ride. I mean, anybody who's been in whitefish in the summer knows that everybody just needs to take a deep breath. And they put out a ton of videos and social media posts, billboard ads. So whitefish is really becoming a leader, I think, and taking something that we just tried to help them with, and they took it from here, and then it blossomed into this really cool, be a friend of the fish, radio ads and everything. And so that's an example of an organization or a city taking a template and now making it work for what they need. So it's a win-win. Another example, Whitefish Legacy Partners, that great organization up in Whitefish, they're seeing similarly all the issues out on the trails. So conflicts on the trail, what a great trail system the Whitefish Trail is. But man, there's issues, and more people on the trail leads to more issues if there's bad behavior. And so they have organized a collective, and you can't see all the groups down here, but they've started this group that we're calling Outside Kind. And there's a similar Outside Kind group in Bozeman that's apparently very successful. And they're creating Outside Kind Flathead. And so Outside Kind, you're going to start seeing different campaigns that have marketing associated with it, as well as advertising, education, outreach. Their first one, they're swinging for the fences because their first one is wag kind, how to address some of the issues with dogs. And so they're going for one of the harder issues right off the bat, but good on them. And so here's an example of, they make these posters that you're going to start seeing out on the trails, hopefully at some of our local businesses. And it's just talking about some of the principles, what a good dog does. Wag kind, be courteous to the trail users. No magical poop fairy who comes around to collect the abandoned mutt mitt bags. Pick up after your dog. And so you're going to start hearing hopefully radio ads with this stuff. You're going to start seeing stickers that have wag kind. And it's just part of a marketing strategy to just get this out there. So just like, the slogans, I'm trying to think, the slogans that everybody just recognizes, so that it becomes ingrained in you that wag kind. And then maybe if you're a dog owner and you're out on the trail and you're inclined to drop that poop bag, you kind of maybe hopefully remember, well, that's not very wag kind. Wag no trace, wag aware. So their next one, they're going to work on biking, trying to get biking good behavior. And that's one I think where some people just don't know the trail etiquette. And so they're really trying to not make this something where we're preaching to people like, don't do this, but it's just trying to give people the information. If you're not from here, or if you are from here, you don't know, we're supposed to merge and yield to hikers. So just trying to help get that information out there in a welcoming way. So Outside Kind this just started these last few months. We've been meeting with Whitefish Trail Legacy Partners. So really cool. And then here's something I don't want to minimize. It truly takes a community, whether we're supporting local businesses or we're supporting these big behavioral things that we need to try to grapple with. It cannot be succeeded by one or two organizations. It takes everyone. It takes all of us to come together and, again, normalize that good behavior, promoting the sustainability. So what are we doing, I guess, because I'm up here just telling what everybody else should be doing. So what's FWP doing? How are we trying to expand opportunities and promote conservation? There's a ton of examples that I could talk about all night about, but I'll just highlight some of the big ones that are really exciting, I think. I mentioned, our enforcement. That's always a common question, like, well, how come you guys just don't write tickets? Well, that's a big part of it. And our game wardens do write a lot of tickets. They do a lot of education. They are out there. You can see we've got wardens across the region. And I had a slide in here that showed all of their common calls that they get on average and the changes of what's going into them. And it was too depressing. So I took it out because it's, if you've read any of the other news stories, law enforcement in this valley right now are dealing with some very serious bad stuff that's really unfortunate. And our game wardens are not separate from that. They're responding to drug use at our state parks. They're responding to homicides. They're responding to suicidal males. We just had one recently at a site. Unfortunately, that is with a growing population, those types of problems are coming with it. And our folks are getting roped into those things. And so we commonly get calls about like, well, why aren't they down there getting that, ticketing people for dogs off leash? And it's like, well, trust me, they would much rather be doing that probably than what they're most of the time being called to do. And so it's a challenge. Our game wardens could probably spend all day dealing with just dogs off leash and parking issues. But they've got a whole other suite of things, including all just the issues law enforcement are running into. And that's not to make an excuse, because they do still write tickets for dog off leash or parking or garbage, littering at our sites, or trespassing. But they do that on top of 50 other things. And so it's a reality and a challenge, but we do have enforcement folks out there who are trying to address the things. When education doesn't work, regulation will, hopefully. We're also purchasing some property for more opportunities. Flathead Lake, up until recently, largest natural freshwater lake in the West, had only about 11% of its shoreline open to the public. And so we were very fortunate that we had two properties that the owners were interested in us purchasing for them. And they gave us, they basically bent over backwards and went through the long process that it takes for government to buy land. And one of them was Summers Beach State Park, right there in Summers. And so 106 acres, including the beautiful beach, as you all probably know. We purchased that last fall and really excited about that new state park. you all can be involved in helping us design the state park. The deadline is April 15th. We've got a little survey online right now that I'd encourage you to go take. And it's asking you, what is it that you want and like at your state parks? Do you want campground? Do you want day use only? Do you want an educational amphitheater? Do you want barbecue grills and a picnic shelter? Like, we are asking for a whole suite of things like that because it's really a blank canvas down there. And we're asking for the public to help us design it. We've already got over 1,200 responses, which is great. People are really engaged in this process, which is awesome. But you still have a few more days. If you haven't taken that survey, I'd really encourage you to, because we really need that baseline data to help us come up with a vision for this park. Because we can sit up here and come up with all the ideas in the world, but if the public doesn't like that, or if it doesn't meet the needs or the interests of the public, we're just setting ourselves up to get into more controversy. And trust me, we're not looking for that. So the more engagement from the public, the more that will help us design a really neat state park down there in summer. So that's on our FWP website. If you just go to fwp.mt.gov, it's right there in your face. You can't miss it. But if you need help with it, please let me know, and I'll make sure to email you or give you the URL. Another exciting property I mentioned, that's up on the north shore of Flathead Lake. Well, down here by Dayton, this family who has worked with us and other agencies to donate public land on Flathead Lake for public use over the last few decades, approached us and gave us a discount on 15 acres of undeveloped, beautiful property right there in Dayton. That's Wild Horse Island. I mean, look at that property, it kind of speaks for itself. And so they approached us and said, we've got realtors knocking on our door every day to turn this into a mega mansion, but we want this to be a public site. And how cool is that? And so we purchased this property back last fall as well, and we're in the process. It's going to be a fishing access site, so it won't be a park. It's going to have a little parking lot right here, a boat ramp right there, and then some nice picnic space. So anyone can take their family or friends and go hang out on Flathead Lake, which is pretty neat. And it's also going to create a much more safe and direct access to Wild Horse. Right now, pretty much, if you like going out to Wild Horse Island, you got to come from over here at Big Arm, or there's a little bit of that public access site that's only got like 3 spots over here in the little town of Dayton. So it'll make it much simpler to get to Wild Horse Island, and safer too. So we are working on that. Hopefully this will be developed by the end of this year. But another neat little piece of property now that folks will be able to access Flathead Lake on. Bad Rock Canyon Wildlife Management Area. I don't know if I've seen a project of ours receive such overwhelming support than this project in Columbia Falls. 800 acres across the river. This is Flathead River. Bad Rock Canyon's right up here. The former aluminum plant was over this way, or like right up here, I think. And the aluminum company years and years ago bought this property across the river, and it's just been sitting on it and leaving it undeveloped, which is great. And then they approached us and said, we could turn this into a higher, pretty fancy subdivision, but if you guys are interested, we'll give you first dibs. And so we scrambled under a pretty tight time frame and had amazing partners from Flathead Land Trust and the Flathead Lakers who helped raise $800,000 of private fundraising for match. And then we were able to get a bunch of federal funding through the Land and Water Conservation Fund and purchase this property this winter as well. So 800 acres of critical range and habitat for moose, sheep, deer, elk, grizzly bears, bull trout coming up and down the Flathead. To be able to preserve open space like this, I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like that window is shrinking right now with all the growth. And so to be able to grab some of these last chunks of undeveloped open space in our valley is pretty cool. And it was overwhelmingly supported. Like, all of the commissioners supported it. All of our local politicians supported it. The governor stood up for it at the land board. And so this was a home run. And really, these projects don't happen without that local support. So really, when I commonly hear folks say, well, why would I provide input? It doesn't matter anyways. It saddens me, because I understand that if you did provide input at some point and the decision was made that didn't align with your view, it probably seems like we didn't listen to you. But the challenge we're faced with is we got to listen to a lot of voices. And so we try to find the common ground when we can. These projects, these ones are dead on arrival if we don't have local support. We cannot buy 800 acres as a government agency without City Council of Columbia Falls, the Flathead County Commissioners, and I think something like 600 community members wrote letters of support that made it impossible for anyone to stand in its way, and that was really neat. So really, that's, I guess, a call to action. If there's a project you see like this, and you think your 5 to 10 minutes of writing a letter is worthless, I promise you it is not. Another really cool thing up here, we talked about the Flathead Ridge Ranch property that was bought down here. Where am I at? No, down here. This is conservation easements. And these are, if you have a quick rundown, conservation easements maintain private land and private hands working for us. So timber companies, these are all former timberlands. They continue to do forest management on those lands. It continues to be private land. It continues to pay property taxes, but they can't subdivide it. And so we are interested from a conservation standpoint because this is now open space that we have secured. About 400,000 acres is what we've got so far of those historical 1 million acres of corporate timberland. We've secured and are in the process of securing, hopefully when it's all said and done, it'll be about 600,000. But you can see all these conservation easements over the last 20 years that have been bought and put on these private lands. And that guarantees a few things. It guarantees that these lands aren't going to be subdivided. It also, we will not do a conservation easement that does not guarantee permanent public access. And so that is guarantee us, I mean, they're not public lands, but we have public access now for all of these lands. And I credit my colleagues who have been working on this stuff for 20 years. Gail Bissell was one of the founders of this movement. I mean, if no other region has this, we are unique in the West, really. And Gail Bissell, Flathead Audubon, long timer, she got this snowball started as a very small snowball down here on the North Shore, and it was such a home run, and it was such a light bulb moment for the landowner and as the government agency to realize, oh, this is a win-win. If we can give that landowner some money for an easement on their land, and they can continue to own the land and have some use that they want to continue to do on that land, and we guarantee that it's going to, for the most part, be open space and public access, that is a win-win. And so Gail Bissell and others got that ball rolling, and this is what it has snowballed into, which is just incredible. And so this is a legacy that we should all be really proud of. And those, again, took lots of public support to get these conservation easements. These are permanent. These are not going away. And so really, really neat. When you look at the landscape here in Northwest Montana, we've been able to protect public wild places. You know, we got Forest Service land, we got Park Service, and we've got a lot of this private land that's it has habitat conservation plans on them, and it's public access essentially. So pretty cool. I'll leave you with just this quote that I think hopefully summarizes what we're trying to talk about here, which is that looking at this from a community perspective, looking at these lands, looking at these natural resources and amenities from a community standpoint and not as a commodity. Any opportunity I have to use an Aldo Leopold quote, I will, and this one I think really resonates now more than ever. So that's just kind of the soapbox thing that I'm trying to talk to as many people about as possible, and happy to answer any questions and also hear any ideas if anyone has any for how we can try to get this snowball started. But that is all I got, and also just happy to answer any general questions. I guess someone asked about Church Slough. We do have a work group that is going to be started here soon to look at a petition from landowners on Church Slough on Flathead River to create no wake along Church Slough. And so we did a call for applications to put a work group together to try to come and find some common ground on that issue. And so stay tuned for that. Once we get the group organized, we'll be having a couple public meetings that I really encourage you to come to, because that's going to be an interesting discussion. And hoping that we'll find some common ground there. But yeah, happy to answer any questions or hear any feedback. Yeah.
I have a question about the conservation easements. How long are they?
Permanent, forever.
Oh, permanent.
So even if they sell the land, that easement stays. We as the agency hold the easement on the land. So they can sell the land to somebody else, but that easement follows that land. Yeah. Yeah.
So for example, on that Mark Jones property there, you know, what if the public doesn't behave? What options does he have to push back on that and to keep the public out, essentially, if he's already,
Yeah.
you know,
So that, I guess this
agreed to an
is
easement.
covering that. He isn't in the easement right there, so thank you for clarifying that. The easement is all the checkerboard. And so this is Mark Jones, Flathead Ridge Ranch. And it's right under there, but you can't see it, sorry. So the checkerboard is all easement land. And that's going to be easement land. That's in the process right now with the Fish and Wildlife Service. So yeah, since he's not under easement, he can pull that out of the block management program tomorrow. And they did pull everything from here over out, and now that's all not open to public access. So checkerboard, conservation easements, what is that? Is that state lands, I believe? State lands which are open to public access. This is Flathead Ridge Ranch purple, and that's, hopefully we're gonna get him to do a conservation easement. And he's been very welcome to, and he's talked about how his family values conservation and open space. And so we're hopeful that he's gonna do it, but he's also, and I appreciate he's being very honest about, like, if people are just gonna trash my land, why would I let it be open? So in other parts of the state, we're losing access for that very reason. Yeah.
One of the big issues is the blankenship
Yeah.
area, and I see it's been postponed for a year of actually coming up with a solution. What's the plan going forward? What are they studying, and when can we expect a plan?
Yeah, so Blankenship, that's the Forest Service. So not to pass the buck on that one, but that one's the Forest Service. So I did see they're gonna delay making a final decision for another year. So I think that means they'll be camping for another year down there. But there's a perfect example of, you know, it went from being a little problem, and these problems of bad behavior, they always start small and, oh, well, I'll get away with it and no one else will, and then they snowball. And Blankenship's a prime example. I'm sure they're gonna look at, there's everything from human waste issues down there. I know we're not exactly thrilled about potential oil getting into the river, impacting the fishery. But yeah, the Forest Service, you know, that's not an easy decision to make. I mean, I won't, in my mind it is, but we'll see what they do. I think in the next year, they're hopefully gonna come up with an answer. Yeah.
Dylan, you mentioned the block management program, but you didn't actually really talk about that in your talk. So that's another really important public use tool that you guys use. And other regions have used it even more than Region 1 because there's so much private land in some of the other regions. Could you just address where we are with block management?
Yeah, thank you. And you're right. I sometimes forget to bring up block management because up here we're so fortunate that these are all block management providers because of the easement. So in Region 1, we've got so much public land and public access that's guaranteed through these easements that, we've got a lot of places to go out and recreate. I think that's a big reason why so many people are moving here is because we've got so many places, outdoor wild places to go recreate. You go east to the mountains and it's the opposite. Public lands are the opposite of most of it's private lands. So Fish, Wildlife, and Parks for 35 years has created a program called block management, and where private landowners can opt to be in the program, and they can get paid now up to $25,000 a year based on how many people they allow on their land for hunting specifically. And so we're really fortunate. East of the mountains, some of the best elk hunting in this state is on private land that is private landowners allowing the public onto their land. And the block management program, it's essentially not paying them for access, it's paying them to offset the costs that come with that. Because, gosh, you hear some of these block management providers talk about the issues that they deal with every year, and it's heartbreaking because, again, they want to allow people on their property, and then people leave gates open and cattle get out. They park where they're not supposed to. A big one that they're trying to, the Recreate Responsibly campaign on that side is really focusing on is weeds. People don't even realize you show up to somebody's property with a dirty rig, and over here we might not think about it, but over there you're bringing that stuff onto a ranch that they have done everything to keep weeds out. And so they've got people showing up with dirty rigs that they are it's giving them heartburn beyond belief. And so we luckily are still maintaining a lot of private landowners in the block management program, but it's every year there are ones who they get done with the hunting season and we almost just want to give them some space and let them just just give them some space, because they are always, there's a lot of folks who are just like, I'm not doing this again. And luckily, because I think it's really a Montana thing to just allow your neighbor and your fellow Montanans and others on your land, but gosh, you can't take it for granted. And so the block management program is critically important. I think 700,000 acres is enrolled in block management across the state. Or 7 million acres, not 700,000, 7 million acres across Montana. Yeah.
Would you ever see the block management program being expanded to recreation and not just fishing?
That's a good idea. I mean, I don't know the history if that's discussed. I know off the top of my head, the main reason it probably hasn't been is it goes back to the funding. You know, we pay the bills with hunting and fishing licenses. And so unfortunately, that's been the big challenge. We've just expanded our state parks, because, you know, we're Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. We just expanded that division to parks and outdoor recreation, because outdoor rec is becoming a huge thing, and there's so much within that. We just don't have a good funding source for it. We do get a little bit of the weed money for parks, I think up to 5%. So that will definitely be a bump. There's a couple other bills, national congressional bills, that could help. The Recovering America's Wildlife Act, which just went through a Senate committee last week, could divert some more of those oil and gas funds, like land and water conservation, towards more general conservation stuff. And that could be a game changer. That could be tens of millions of dollars coming to Montana for maybe exactly what you're talking about. Because right now, and you also hear the discussion commonly about the backpack tax, where we've got Pittman-Robertson, which taxes the guy, you know, the gun owners on their bullets and their guns. We got the Dingell-Johnson Act that taxes the tackle and your fishing rods to support fishing conservation. Well, the mountain bikers and the campers and the hikers, they haven't really kicked in. And so they enjoy all these public places too, but they're not really ponying up any money. And so the backpack tax is what it's been referred to. And it's been debated for decades, you know, where maybe start doing an excise tax, just like PR or DJ, with your kayaks and your backpacks and your tents. That hasn't gone anywhere, but that's a discussion out there everybody should have some skin in the game. Yeah.
As a non-game person who used to work the fishing game, this has always been a hot button topic for me, because it comes up and it's always phrased that way. It's like, it's time for the birders to step up. The hunters and fishers have been doing it for years. The point is, we have required them to step up.
Yeah.
We license them, we tax them. It's not an option. If you said, hey, next year you don't have to pay an excise tax on your animal.
That's true, they probably wouldn't.
Right?
Right.
So, I mean, that's always been a cultural thing that I think has been hard to get past. And, you know, Montana, of course, still being very much a hunting and fishing tradition state, maybe one of the last to really change, but there's an incredible growth in other recreation, as you know.
Yeah.
The whole topic. So I think we have to start thinking about that and framing it.
Yeah. I mean, and so something like that came up last legislative session, where anyone who wanted to go to our fishing access sites would be charged. We'd have to buy a conservation license, so it'd be $7 or $8. With that in mind, to say, you know, you're right. I mean, if we ask people to voluntarily pitch in, it probably won't happen. So do we try to find ways to require it? And that, you know, leads to another kind of difficult discussion. But that's a very fair point.
There's been things like, well, not to take the discussion too far off the rails, but, you know, like the duck stand.
Yeah.
There's big pushback, even putting something that's not a game animal on the duck stand. It's like, this is a huge opportunity, and yet a lot of the public feels it's a threat that these other users, rather than an opportunity. That's the mindset people have to go over. I mean, I wish they required a duck stand to go into any national fish and wildlife refuge. Why not? I mean,
yeah.
Lots of users go to refuges.
Right. No, you're not wrong, for sure. I think there is definitely a mindset of a lot of folks, myself included, think everyone should try to have some skin in the game. But others are like, well, we've got our seat at the table, and we really want to have more people at the table, because that means we're the only ones at the table. So, yeah, that's a very fair point.
One of your points is, I think, recreate locally, and I know as the Chamber of Commerce has responded to the survey that said at least in this part of the country, a little overrun by tourists. Part of theirs was, let's not ever everybody go to Glacier, let's go to other places. What are you doing to help identify other places and get people out?
Yeah, well, and that's a challenge because we also almost really don't promote our state parks that much because we commonly hear from locals saying, I can't get a campsite at our state parks because they're all full. And so it's, we've really cut back marketing completely. So now the only marketing you'll really see us do is Recreate Responsibly. You're not going to really see us doing a lot of like, go visit Big Arm and camp at Big Arm because like, there's nowhere to camp in Big Arm. They're full. They fill up 6 months in advance. So yeah, I think and that's the challenge. And the chamber's really wrestling with this because like, that's their bread and butter or not necessarily the chamber, but the Convention and Visitors Bureau, like they literally make their bill, they pay their bills off the bed tax and lodging taxes. And so visitors, they need visitors here. And then obviously that's good for our economy and our restaurants and our hotels. But that's why they're trying to incorporate the sustainability messaging about, not everybody has to, the Sun Road's great, but maybe go somewhere else. It's tough because somewhere else is also crowded. And so we don't, although we've got all of this great public land and all these great places, I don't know anybody who's been to Hungry Horse these last 2 summers. It's crazy. There's people camping with the new Sprinter vans, you can camp everywhere. So every wide spot along that road had campers, and the Forest Service is pulling their hair out, trying to figure out, it's like Blankenship. They don't know what to do because it's like, well, technically they can do that, but you have people camping on sides of roads, that comes with a whole host of issues. And so it's a challenge. We don't have a good answer though, because there's not really a place right now that I would feel good about saying, hey, don't go to Glacier Park, go to Summers Boat Access Point. No way, that place is packed. So that's another reason why we're trying to expand with more sites, Summers Beach and Montebello. More sites will hopefully spread it out. The concern is that more sites just mean more people too. So not an easy answer there, but it's a fair point.
All right, any more questions for Dillon? All right, well, Dillon, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.